Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I went to a whore who said my life's a bore.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss the Basket Case Trilogy. Starting with Basket Case, which came out in 1982, written and directed by Frank Henenlotter. Iain, why don't you give us the synopsis for the original Basket Case?
Well, the story follows Dwayne Bradley and his brother Belial. They were conjoined twins when they were younger and were forcibly separated. Belial, though, has a psychic connection to his brother Dwayne and uses Dwayne to help him hunt down all of the doctors that forcibly separated them.
I'd always heard of Basket Case, wasn't so much aware of the film's sequels, but I was always aware of it. Being a fan of exploitation films and horror films from sort of 42nd Street on New York, it's always kind of interested me because it was a wave of filmmakers with no money literally trying to get their films in the theaters to earn some money and perhaps some recognition.
Yeah.
This was no exception. So much so that this film had a $35,000 budget, which is an actual prop in the film. The main character of Dwayne is walking around the entire film with the film's budget in his pocket. That just goes to show you that this is what you're in for with this film. It was inspired by exploitation, and this is a seedy, bloody exploitation film. When the film was released, it didn't reach that much success, mainly because the studio that was showing the film decided that perhaps as this is a horror comedy, we should just make it a comedy. And they removed all of the gore and most of the kills from the film, then put it in theaters. And of course, it bombed. It didn't do very well at all. So a couple of other theaters decided, well, let's put all the gore back in there and then advertise it as the full uncut Basket Case, to which the film's success has gone on right up until today, where it is now an absolute cult classic with its own Blu-ray release.
I remember when I was younger, before the 90s, seeing the posters in my local video store. You know, it's either the poster of Belial's eyes peeking out the top of the basket, or the drawn animated one with Belial giving the finger to people out the basket. And I was just like, oh my God, I need to see this movie. You know, people were like, if you've seen Basket Case, oh my God, it's the goriest movie ever. And then the second and third one came out and nobody mentioned anything after that. But I was like, oh, I need to see this movie. You know, big horror fan. I need to get to this movie. But I never had the chance. You know, my local video store closed down and DVDs took over. And, you know, you had that whole dark period. And then I managed to get hold of the videotape and sat down and watched it. And yeah, okay. The horror aspects of the movie are, I don't want to say weak, but then they're not the greatest moments in the movie. Like the first kill, that doctor coming out of his house, you know, and
he gets spooked by something rustling in the trees. And he's
yeah.
just like, oh, it must be a killer that's come after me.
Yeah.
And he goes running back in and grabs hold of the phone and he's like, help. But you kind of like, what is chasing him? Because as a first time viewer, you're like, what is it? I guess this is, you know, the point of view shot of the killer. I don't know. But then when you see that hand just appear from right in front of him, you're like, how did you not see that? How did you miss that?
Exactly.
And so I'm like, okay, so this is ridiculous. But, you know, there's lots of blood flying everywhere, and I'm kind of intrigued to see what this is.
Yeah, I mean, we cut to Kevin Van Hentenryck playing Dwayne, and he's your focal point for all three movies. And in this one, obviously, looking very young, big, massive hairstyle there, and he's walking around with this basket. And I remember on the back of the videotape, it had all these questions. Who is this guy? What's he got in the basket? Why does he keep feeding burgers and hot dogs into it? And you're like, oh, God, I need to find out. Yeah, no, not really. because the strangeness of the movie, I think, especially in the first one, comes from the outside characters.
Yes.
You know, you've got the weird fat guy receptionist of the hotel. I completely forgot about the old woman who starts talking to him about the other lady who lived in the apartment that he moves into. And she just stops halfway through the fucking story and walks off. And you have that same look on your face that Dwayne has as she walks away, like, what?
Sure.
Yeah.
There are so many strange characters in this film, and I think it's kind of a point being made about the complete strangers in New York City, the weirdos.
Yeah, the
because
weirdos.
this film is filled with them. I think they all congregated at this one building.
Yeah.
Which, of course, it's not a real hotel. A lot of the rooms were made up of either out-of-service elevators,
right,
or friends' bedrooms. And it's just... But it works, you know, you kind of get sold on this run-down, dirty hotel, which is a great set for this film.
Yeah, the set is good, and like I said, the outside character's good. The script comes across as hammy for me.
No, I don't know whether it's the script or whether it is just the actors, because not one of them felt like an actor. Every single one of them felt like they'd just read their lines for the first time.
What's in the basket?
Clothes.
He's smuggling in a case of booze. He's going to throw us a party.
And that's the final take.
Yeah, that's the one and only take.
Yes.
You know, we're just going to get it out of the way now. We follow Dwayne as he goes to the cinema, and he's got this basket with him, and he's sat there watching the film, and the basket's watching the film as well. And then a dodgy guy in a vest decides, oh, I'm going to steal the basket. So he steals it, and whatever is inside it attacks him and mutilates him. But he runs off, and Dwayne takes the basket back to his apartment. And I'm like, you know, I want suspense. You know, I expected suspense with these movies. Obviously, I saw these movies a long time ago, and this is the first time for Gary, so I was very, very happy when he was sitting down watching it originally. But, you know, the film just doesn't carry itself like a traditional horror movie, you know, with the classics like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween and even The Evil Dead that came out long before this movie.
That's because this film just makes you belly laugh.
Yeah.
At the atrocious level of filmmaking.
The absurdness. That is the word I use for all three of these movies is the absurdness, you know, from, like we said, the script, the acting, you know, the kills, the effects.
Well, there's a scene when Dwayne is kind of going out on a date with the receptionist.
Yeah, the receptionist of the doctor he went and
And
saw, yeah.
that was one of the worst sets. I was like, is that a doctor's receptionist? What is that stacked up behind her? This does not look like a clean, hygienic, friendly service.
Yeah.
And so, while he's out on this date, Belial starts to get raged. He gets his rage on because he's not getting any.
Yeah.
And when it cuts to the stop motion animation, I just cringed
God.
badly. I was like, how did they think that this would fly? Like, even back then, this looks terrible.
Yes, it's terrible. Like I said, coming off the back of Evil Dead 1, you know, the effects at the end of Evil Dead 1 are ropey, but they work, especially for the time, what the people went through in the cabin, you know, managing to get it on set. Somebody went and watched that film for Basket Case and went, yeah, I could do that better. And then you watch this little fucking stop motion claymation Belial hit the floor and start raging in the room. And I'm like,
Dude, just look at that fucking creature. It's like Krang from the Turtles, you know, just disembodied.
Just because I'm all brain doesn't mean I don't have feelings.
you try to, like I said, you try to get suspenseful about it. You know, it's a horror movie. But if this, your main horror character, the thing you're supposed to be fearful of, you're pissing yourself in with laughter
Well, like I
with.
said, the film is supposed to be a comedy horror. So... So, the real motivation behind Dwayne and Belial throughout the film is that it is a revenge story.
Yeah.
And as we saw the Doctor killed off earlier at the beginning, we soon find out that Dwayne is hunting down the remaining 2 or 3 other Doctors that performed the operation which separated the 2 brothers.
Yeah.
Cue flashback.
Couldn't they have an operation?
It's not that simple.
Just having that prosthetic just stuck to the side of him, that rubber foam whatever it was, head.
Oh, God.
And then the actual separation of them with the cartoon sound effects and the Doctors just kind of just separating it like there was no organic material in between. It was just
blood spewing everywhere. And I mean, you know, why didn't the dad take him to a hospital? You know, why did he have to get these 3 seedy doctors, who one of them is a veterinarian, to attach these things to the point where they take the Belial part and go, we'll just put it in a black bag and put it by the rubbish.
But then Belial escapes and goes and sets up this jigsaw rig with a power saw.
He doesn't escape. He starts using his psychic abilities, doesn't he? To call on his brother. And yeah, the 2 of them construct this fucking saw trap for their dad. Oh my God!
The comedy comes though when they say that, we never know what happened to him.
That's what I thought. I fucking died.
They could find no evidence of who killed your father, nor do they have any idea what killed him.
The blade came down, sliced him in the gut, but his legs fell apart like that. So I'm assuming that the blade caught him in the crotch. Yeah. Like we said, it's absurdness. You know, we've now had the reveal of Belial, and the attacks on the Doctors are good. I want to say good. I don't want to upset anybody.
I kind of got annoyed with the amount of screaming in this film. All of the victims scream for prolonged periods of time. It's really exaggerated. And not only that, but Dwayne and Belial spend a lot of the time screaming as well. So I'm just like, God damn it, this is screaming the movie. And then when he gets to the veterinarian doctor, and Belial decides he's going to wedge her head in a drawer full of syringes.
Oh, God, yeah.
And she just comes out and screams and screams and screams. She doesn't die because it just eventually cuts away. Oh, God. Just look at it. It just... Oh, no.
But, yeah, Belial is kind of jealous that Dwayne is getting attention from this doctor's receptionist. And Dwayne, in this one, Dwayne is actually wanting to go off and have a normal life. He doesn't want to be stuck around his brother anymore. So you've got this strained relationship going on. But it's like the drunk sequence where Dwayne's having a few drinks with the local prostitute that lives nearby called Casey. And yeah, basically just tells her the whole backstory about the the separation, and she's like, "Who's in the basket?" And he's like, "That's my brother." And she's like, "What the fuck?"
Well, he kind of laughs it off at first, like that's a good joke.
Yeah.
But then he just keeps going. He's like, no, he gives the entire backstory right there, and then you're just like, okay, going home now.
Yeah. And while Dwayne is asleep, Belial sneaks into Casey's room and starts to fondle her while she's asleep. And she freaks out when she sees him. And Belial escapes, but steals a pair of knickers to smell in his basket. That's probably more terrifying than any of the other stuff that you've seen in the film. And then you get to possibly what I think might have been the point that catches everybody with this film is Belial decides that he's going to sneak over to the receptionist's apartment.
Now, originally, conceptually, they wanted to have a scene where we would see Belial going through New York City and making his way there.
That would have been terrible.
But they realised there's no budget left to do this. They don't have the technical ability to pull this off. So they decided to ask the actor playing Dwayne if he would just streak through New York for a shot.
Yeah.
To show that this is actually Belial who's making his way there.
You know, that kind of worked.
Yeah.
I did get that. The first time I watched it and the second time is the whole, it's kind of like the American Werewolf in London sequence, you know, where David's running through the forest, you know, psychically, this mentally how his mind is. And then, then we have a POV shot of Belial sneaking into her apartment and she's lying there naked on the bed and he starts to rape her.
Now, this is where most of the crew on the film apparently walked out because they thought that this scene was too disgusting and too perverted to actually shoot. Yeah. I was like, but did they not realise what film they were making?
Yeah, the film's called Basket Case.
Right? Like, what offended their sensibilities? I mean, the actress had no problem revealing herself for the audience.
Yeah.
And come on, it's like a plasticine turd sat on her crotch. Like, come on!
I really hoped that when Dwayne picked up Belial and you saw the blood underneath...
Do you think there'd be a plop sound?
Yeah, I was hoping there'd be a sound going off, but there wasn't. And then Dwayne takes Belial back to the apartment and they start, he starts ridiculing him, he starts attacking him, he starts giving him shit that he wanted a normal life. And everybody comes into the apartment and they see Belial really for the first time. And once again, the comedy kicks in because Belial decides to grab Dwayne's nuts.
I thought it was quite a cool shot, the way they sort of elevated him in the air and kept him suspended. I was that looks kind of cool, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's no Loomis versus Myers at the end of Halloween, is it? No. And we come to the climactic ending where they fall out the window and the two of them are just hanging off the sign of the hotel and Belial is barely hanging on to Dwayne by choking him. But Belial cannot pull himself and Dwayne up. So he ends up letting go and the two of them crash to the floor. And
wow, it's a pretty savage ending for both of them. I mean, it's kind of justly deserved. They are serial killers after all.
Yes, yeah.
And as much as Dwayne has kind of professed that he wanted a normal life and freedom, he is so messed up and so involved in these killings that you cannot really see him as an innocent person anymore.
No.
And so, having them both dead at the end of the film, I can get with that.
And it finished off the first movie quite nicely. Like I said, the absurdness, the dark dinginess of New York City, the stupid special effects.
Well, I wouldn't say it's my favourite scene, but the stop motion animation is definitely memorable. I'm never going to forget that. I appreciate the fact that they built the set for the stop motion and tried their hardest to make it look like the actual hotel room. And, it's so laughable and so funny that you'll never forget it. Of course, some of the kills in the film are also just as hilarious because you see this blob with arms sort of launching itself at people and they're struggling to get it off. And I'm like, how are you getting killed by this blob thing with arms?
Yeah. My favourite scenes mainly revolve around Dwayne. I think Kevin Van Hentenryck, with what he had to work with, worked very well. You know, with him just sitting there talking to the basket, it works. You believe, you get invested in the character, that there is something in there. You know, something that Dwayne doesn't want you to see just yet, but Dwayne's got this whole plan of what he's going to do.
To his credit, it was the same actor who also provided the voice work for Belial.
Oh, nice.
And the face cast that is in Belial.
Nice, yeah. You know, some of the kills I think are completely ridiculous, but I did like the kill of the dad, especially the way that it just doesn't work at all.
I do have to recommend Basket Case. As a fan of the exploitation genre of films, this fits right in there. You know, it ticks all the boxes as to what you'd expect this sort of film to have.
Yeah.
You know, it has the gore, it has mild titillation, it's slightly perverted and seedy, and at the same time, it's really damn funny. Whether you're laughing at the awkward line delivery, the dodgy special effects, or the absurdness of what you're actually watching. This is a film for sort of gore hounds, horror enthusiasts, and again, fans of the exploitation genre. You'll definitely get a kick out of this. Watching it on Blu-ray doesn't really restore the film and make it look brand new. If anything, it still looks ropey and old. And I appreciate that too.
I recommend Basket Case, but as Gary said, you know, only to horror enthusiasts. And even then, you probably already have it and have watched it. Not everybody's going to enjoy this movie. Even horror enthusiasts might go, this is absolutely fucking shit.
Yeah.
It's funny in places. It's weak in places. But there's a warm heart there. You know, the director had an idea that he wanted to work with. The actors did what they could with what they had. The budget was wasted on a fucking stop motion killer. It's got its good points. It's got its bad points. Check it out.
That's going to bring us on to Basket Case 2. 8 years since the original film's release. Again, written and directed by Frank Henenlotter.
Yeah. This one, Belial and Dwayne have survived the fall from the first movie and have been picked up by Granny Ruth and her granddaughter Susan, who look after a house of freaks. I want to go in depth in the rest of the story. There's a reporter looking into the story, but it's mainly about Belial getting his end away.
Well, originally, this was not Basket Case 2.
Right.
Frank Henenlotter was like, you know what, I'm done with Basket Case. That worked.
Yeah.
I now want to make another film, and I'm going to call it House of Freaks.
Okay.
The studio was like, no. Basket Case is done really well. Make this Basket Case 2 and bring in Dwayne and Belial. And Frank was like, no, I want to tell a story about the freaks and about this other character, which maybe is in the Basket Case universe.
Yeah.
And the studio again said, no, bring these characters in. And so it kind of at first felt a little bit forced, but then at the same time also felt quite natural, a progression in the story.
Yeah. I suppose the only issue you have with this movie is the time difference. You know, they finish the end of the first movie really well, and then they get Belial and Dwayne into hospital with Granny Ruth turning up, and they get picked up. But the fact that the first one came out 8 years before, there is a definite difference between not only the camera work and the budget, but also the actors' appearances as well.
Considering this is supposed to be a couple of days after the event, you could tell straight away when you see Kevin Van Hentenryck, you could just see the age difference, and also the actress who played Casey in the original film. You see her briefly in a news broadcast, and you're like, she's definitely aged, nearly 10 years since the last film. But it works. I'm kind of glad that they brought the same actors back.
Yeah, I mean, the effects for Belial have definitely come up.
It's a completely different puppet this time.
Yeah, but it's still a puppet.
Well, yeah.
I mean, the effects for Eve
But at least
are a hell of a lot better.
At least in this film, Belial is out of the basket within the first 5 minutes, killing people.
Yes.
It's like, there's no what's in the basket. It's, this is what's in the fucking basket.
The absurdness from the first one just flows straight into this one.
You can tell it's keeping the comedy, especially when he kind of sneaks into an old man's room, steals his clothes, and then steals the cleaning trolley, and walks past the sleeping security guards to get out. I'm just like, yeah, this is just stupid. It's just stupid, but you go with it. And then we are introduced to Granny Ruth and her granddaughter, who takes Belial and Dwayne back to her mansion.
Yeah.
Where she is housing freaks. Like, carnival freak show extremities. But this just takes it, like, times 12, you know? It just keeps cranking it up, being like, what am I looking at? Am I offended? Am I revolted? I'm still compelled to just keep looking at them because...
Yeah. I just want to laugh out loud at them.
Is that a mouse man? Is that a frog person?
There's one with noses. Just loads of noses.
I've got to point out right now, Moonface, or Mooney, as he's called, and you'll never guess which actor is behind that rubber mask.
Who?
It's David Emdy from Dawn of the Dead. Stephen Flyboy has, from Dawn of the Dead, become Moonface. Just like, what happened to your acting career? I guess... Yeah, there's only one Ken Foree.
Yeah, for me, it's like they looked at the effects of Belial and were like, we really need to, you know, like I know you said that they made the freaks first. You know, they had this freak film idea first and then brought Belial into it. But it's like, oh, we've got this silly appearance of Belial as a puppet. Let's just have loads of other actors look just as silly as well, and it'll look natural.
Would you, Lorenzo?
Dai campi, dai prate, che non dalla.
And I suppose in a weird way it does. What freaks me out is Dwayne. He is fucking off the wall, batshit crazy. His mannerisms, the way his face is, the way he carries himself and his lines and delivers it.
Well, he's constantly throughout this film also saying that he's not a freak, you know, he's normal. Yeah. And I'm going to have a normal life. And he's trying to convince this granddaughter that she's not a freak too and to leave with him. Now that Belial has his own family of freaks, he's free to have a normal life. But it's not working out that way because he's a bit of a celebrity now, along with his brother, after the massacre in the original film.
Massacre? 3 people?
Well, there was quite a few doctors killed and lots of noise made. Either which way, they're now kind of mini celebrities, especially in New York. And a newspaper has put out $1 million bounty on finding the whereabouts of these characters. And so we now follow reporters trying to break this story and find out where Dwayne and his brother are. Now, almost straight away, when Belial is introduced to another sort of basket case, straight away my mind just went, I'm gonna guess that this basket case is another Siamese twin of the granddaughter.
That's what I always
instantly
thought.
I was like, well, if she appears normal, then I guess this was her Siamese twin as well.
Yeah, it's not. It's not that. We're explained by Granny Ruth that they just found Eve. So I put it down to the fact that, you know, somebody must have had her locked off and then left her in a basket somewhere, and Granny Ruth has come across it. But yeah, you know, Belial is infatuated with her, and it just becomes, like we said, it just becomes absurd. Like the reporters trying to get into the house, that whole sequence where the reporter is talking to Granny Ruth, and Granny Ruth's like, no, there's nothing here. No, there's nothing. Oh, there's nothing. And then Dwayne walks through the fucking door carrying a basket. And you're like, oh, fuck's sake. Oh, great. Oh, okay. You're not Dwayne. No, I'm
delivering the groceries.
Yeah, there's groceries in here. I come around every now and again.
It's so awkward and bad.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the reporter goes back. She's like, yeah, I found them. And then she returns with her cameraman. And
Yeah.
she's like, yeah, you go in there, snap some pictures and get out.
Yeah. But Granny Ruth has already mobilized the freaks to protect the house.
Do we flee? Or do we fight?
And so when the photographer sneaks into the house and sneaks up into the attic,
You know, for some reason, I just couldn't help but think of, like, Aliens. You know, when
Yeah,
Hicks
when
pops
Hicks-
his head
yeah.
up through the shaft and all the freaks are coming at him and he's just there taking pictures. I'm
Yeah.
well, I guess it's like sheer fear and panic because he doesn't, retreat. He just stays there and the freaks just pull him in. I was like, that's really fucking lame.
yeah.
Like, we don't even really get to see him get killed. We just get to see the flashes from outside the house as the other reporter's like, well, I guess he's done for.
Yeah, it's her way that she stood outside. She's like, oh my God. And that's it. All she can see is flashes. I'm like, well, what is oh my God?
Well, I guess none of them have any idea that the house is full of these freaks yet.
Yeah. And obviously he's not coming out. Obviously the budget wasn't amazing. They are starting to just use footage again. Like when Belial goes to his psychiatry meeting and I suppose he tells Ruth about the separation or psychically shows it to her. But we have to sit through the separation of the two brothers again. In its entirety.
Yeah.
Just in case you didn't see the first one, I didn't get around to it. We're just going to explain it to you now.
It's not who I am now.
So once they've killed the photographer, Dwayne decides to convince the editor to come to a local bar to have a talk. Because, well, he's just gone batshit crazy at this point, Dwayne. And the bar is just full of the freaks, all wearing paper masks.
I thought that was a pretty good shot at first. Because you think it's just a normal bar
Yeah,
setting.
yeah.
You don't notice that the bar is full of them. And that reveal I thought was quite horrifying. I could only imagine being that editor and just seeing all these really awful masks being taken off to then see these monsters that are all the way around him. I was like, that's pretty cool. And the way he tries to just slowly back out of the bar.
Yeah. And then they kill the reporter, I believe, as well.
Yeah, they catch everyone gets killed in this one. But she gets her face mangled by Belial.
Yeah.
And that I thought was a pretty cool effect, actually.
Gee, Marcy, you should see yourself. You're a freak now, too.
At first I was like, wait, is she dead? Or is she going to be a mutant freak like the rest?
Yeah.
I think she died because she doesn't reappear anywhere else.
No, and the ending of the movie kind of just... I know I've used the word absurd a lot, but it is just massively absurd. Susan and Dwayne start to get close, and they start to fondle each other on the bed. At the same time, Belial and Eve are getting close together. And while we are given the most hideous imagery of Belial and Eve going at it,
That is one of the grossest, most bizarre things I've seen in film. Thank you, Basket Case 2.
yeah. But then you cut to Dwayne and Susan explains to Dwayne that she's pregnant, and you're like, really?
6 years pregnant.
Yeah. And then her son pops out of her belly.
Well, don't be afraid of him. He's not dangerous. He just needs to come up for air sometimes.
Dwayne realizes at this point, as he's already batshit crazy and he's surrounded by freaks, that to fit in, he has to become a freak as well. But in his kind of emotional outburst, he accidentally pushes Susan out of a window. And I've got to bring up Granny Smith's line, because it will come up in the third one, just in case you miss it, where she's like, "Where's Susan?" And she smashes out the window and flies down the table. And I couldn't help, while I was reading the notes, I was just like, can you imagine if you could just do that every time? If you could just say, "Where's so-and-so?" and they just smash out of a window. And it's that brilliant line as well, where Dwayne, obviously, he's gone shit crazy now. He realizes he needs to get his brother back. And it's the way he kind of walks into the room with a baseball bat and goes, "Hi, can I speak to you for a minute?" And just whacks Belial with a bat.
Now, this is just stupid. This is fucking stupid. Watching these sideshow freaks running around the house trying to find Dwayne and Belial.
Yeah, well, how big's this house?
But they're not even looking. They're just prancing around the hallway. Like, what are you fucking doing? This made it painful to watch. Like, I was kind of just looking at the time index to go, right, this film's nearly over. So, you know, as odd and crazy as it has been, just hurry up and fucking find him. Because this is just padding.
Yeah. And they managed to find him, where he's attempted to stitch Belial back to his side. And we are left with that shot of Dwayne standing there holding on to Belial and saying that everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine.
It's okay. We're together again.
My favourite scene in Basket Case 2 is when Belial laughs at Dwayne. Like I said, once again, Kevin Van Hentenryck pulls off a brilliant performance of acting in front of a prosthetic plastic mould. But he does give this brilliant Oscar-winning speech about how he wants to be normal and how his brother is happy and that they should just separate and so that Dwayne can go off and have a normal life and Belial can have a normal life. But it's when it cuts to Belial, and throughout the movie, or throughout all the movies, all you ever get is Belial going, but now you get Belial going, that was creepy as fuck.
Oh god, memorable scenes.
Yeah,
you know, the Belial and Eve having sex. You know,
I had to bring it up.
I need to scrub my brain. I need to scrub my eyeballs because I don't want to think about that.
Yeah,
I don't want to think about it.
Biologically, I can't think about it. I'm like, how?
It's when her leg is wrapped around the back of him and it's just flapping.
Yeah, is he doing a doggy?
I think so.
Yeah,
I can't really tell.
You know, because is there missionary? I try not to think about it.
Yeah, and the bar scene I thought was actually quite a good scene. They got the lighting right and the reveal of all the monsters in the bar. I thought that worked really well. The deaths in this one, yeah, on par with the first one.
Well, I wouldn't say on par. I mean,
They're less gory.
Yeah, they're definitely less gory. I mean, they're not as... I wouldn't even say shocking. In the first one, they weren't really shocking. You kind of saw them happening before they happened.
I really don't recommend Basket Case 2. It only made me laugh a couple of times. It's put horrific, grotesque imagery in my head that I need to go and detox it out severely. You know, I'd only recommend this film if you're a huge fan of the original Basket Case and you want to see the continuing adventures of Dwayne and Belial.
But in that respect, you should have probably have already seen it.
Granny Ruth kind of steals a lot of the show in this film, which is really annoying. I really hated her character and expected her to be dead by the end of the film, and was quite surprised that she kind of has the final moments.
Yeah.
All of the freaks, though, you know, I think that the prosthetics and the rubber foam masks that they have on were quite effective in low lighting. But when you require then the actors to actually do anything, they just become fucking cartoons.
Oh, God, yeah.
They have no dialogue. They have no facial expressions.
No.
And so they're just props. They're not characters. And so the whole film just feels flat. Great attempt at creating these monsters, but you just didn't use them. They just became background.
Yeah.
And so therefore it just didn't go anywhere. So for me, it's a really lackluster sequel. And I was burnt out at the end of it. I was like, this is not... Didn't feel like Basket Case.
Like Gary said, I recommend Basket Case if you're interested in the first one, you want to watch the second one. If you've already seen the first one, you should have already seen the second and third one. It's not a great sequel, but saying that, I've seen a lot of shit 2017 movies that are worse than Basket Case 2, and that's saying a lot. Kevin Van Hentenryck steals the performance again just by what he's able to do with what he's got. The woman playing Granny Ruth, you may recognize her voice because she played Vera in Superman 3, and I think she actually played a better part in Superman 3. The effects for Belial are slightly better, but I think that's only on par with the fact that everybody else looks like they're wearing a fucking Halloween mask. Eve, I suppose, is the only one who's really the most memorable, but that's mainly because of this.
Oh, no, I can't. Why did you do that?
Because I can. Do it again!
No, stop it!
Oh, sorry.
Basket Case 3! Basket Case 3 came out just a year later after Basket Case 2. Again, written and directed by Frank Henenlotter.
Yeah. If you didn't see the second one, here's the whole beginning. Here's the whole ending of the second movie at the beginning of the third movie. We have Susan revealing her son, Bernard, that we'll find out later. And we obviously go through this sequence again. And we watch Susan fall out the window and we see that Dwayne has stitched Belial again to his side. But then it just jumps.
Several months later, yeah.
Yeah, and Dwayne is locked up in Granny Ruth's personal padded room. Yeah, locked up in a straitjacket. Now, one thing I gotta bring up with this movie is how weak this movie already is, with the fact that in the second movie, during the credits, you had a reverse drawing of Belial flying away in the distance. Beginning of the third movie, you have the same drawing, but coming towards you. That's pretty weak. You just don't do that with your intros. I do like the fact that for most of this, for about half an hour of this opening, Dwayne is just in a straitjacket. And he comes across as even though he's obviously the normal one, he actually is the freak. He's the outsider compared to everybody else in the house. You know, all the freaks are still there. Susan's still dead. So's Bernard.
But Eve is pregnant.
Yeah, Eve's pregnant.
And so Granny Ruth decides that we can't stay here, even though we've managed to lose the police and the press.
Yeah.
It's time for a road trip to Florida.
Okay, everyone. You should all be packed, have your luggage about the bus, and be ready to go. All aboard!
Where there's somebody there who might be able to help with Eve's pregnancy.
Yeah, Big How and Little How. But yeah, they all jump onto the fucking magic school bus. Why did Granny Ruth need to shout all aboard? What was the point? Did you just need to fill in space on this film? I really believe that at the end of Basket Case 2, they were like, we just need to just do the third one now. Because we're probably never ever going to come back to this. So there's just so much, I suppose, padding.
Flashbacks to the previous two movies.
Flashbacks as well. Even this moment where Granny Ruth points out the picture of Susan. Couldn't you have got a better picture of her? Because it's like, that's just her from the end of the second movie and somebody took a still image. And we follow them on the magic school bus as they're making their way to Peach Trees. Now, I know Gary absolutely loved this bit. Gary, why don't you tell them about your favourite scene on the bus?
Oh, fuck off.
I try to prove my love to you. Over and over. What more can I do?
A fucking musical number in the fucking bus. Now, I know the lady playing Granny Ruth is like a theatre singer and she's done, you know, acts like that. Maybe it was written into her contract. She's like, don't pay me, just let me do a musical number. But you're just looking at these freaks while they're going, and you're like,
they can't say anything because they're part of the Screen Actors Guild is that they weren't allowed to say anything, otherwise it puts them into a different pay bracket. So they could only make noises, which turns this musical number into a what the fuck is going on? And why does Basket Case need a stupid musical in the first 20 minutes?
Because it's absurd, man.
This is beyond absurd.
Yeah, it's beyond absurd. We were absurd in the first one and then absurd part 2, and now we're beyond absurd.
Cause you've got
This is so awful to get through, I have to tell you. This was one of the most painful films I've sat through in recent memory.
Worse than Tekken?
Yes.
Oh, shit. They get to Peach Trees and Dwayne, they stop the bus and Granny Ruth goes into the local drugstore to buy shit. I don't know why she needs so many condoms. It's not like any of the freaks are going to get laid unless unless she's thinking of Belial and Eve going at it some more. I try not to think about that too much. But once again, Kevin Van Hentenryck steals the performance by trying to escape from the bus while still locked in a straitjacket.
It just so happens to bump into the sheriff's daughter.
Yeah, Opal. That's just a stupid sequence. He's explaining to her that he is part of the Bradley twins, the mass murderers from New York, and that she should contact the police because he's been held against his will. And she just fucking either ignores him or just doesn't listen to him, you know, or doesn't hear him. And you're just like, what? This is just filler. It's just filler. And we've already seen the sheriff go to Big Hal's house. Now, Big Hal is the doctor that Granny Ruth is taking Eve to go see because Ruth isn't entirely sure how biologically Eve can give birth. And we get the impression that there's something with little Hal. What the fuck? I mean...
Well, I think it was in the second movie. Granny Ruth explained that she had a son that had 7 arms, and there was a portrait of him. Ish.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's it.
But we don't actually get to see him in this, where there's a shot where I think the sheriff is leaving the house and you can see him sat up on the roof.
Yeah, and
you're like,
waves.
Something not quite right about him.
But he's a genius. He's a brilliant inventor. His mind is unparalleled, we're told. And finally, the magic school bus turns up at Old Hal's house. And they start to get Eve ready for her birth because her water breaks.
That's it, careful. Hold it, hold it. She's beginning to leak.
Look, is that wonderful?
They get everything ready, and once again, it's just a stupid fucking sequence. You know, they're in the room. Old Hal has already told us that little Hal will be taking care of, you know, Eve while she gives birth, and he will just be helping her. Why do you need all these freaks running around just moving shit? None of them know where any of this stuff goes. It's not like you're going to need half of this equipment. But once again, like the sequence at the end of number 2, they're just running around on screen going, "Ah," and I'm just like,
they're just moving props. You know, they're just distractions from, you know, whatever is supposed to be going on.
Yeah.
Because this birth, again, it's just farcical.
The best sequence, like I said, is Kevin Van Hentenryck when he's in the room and he's trying to break out the straitjacket, and then he stops when Granny Ruth comes in and she says she's going to let him go and hopes that he can join them up in the bedroom and not to do anything silly, and he's like, yeah, I'm fine, okay, I'm fine. And then as soon as the door closed, he just throws himself out the window. I was like, that's brilliant. That's worth it. Ruth decides to let Belial out so that he can watch the birth, forgetting that Belial has a problem with doctors. And just in case you forgot why Belial has any problems with doctors, let's see the separation sequence from the first movie and the second movie in its entirety.
Yeah, I get it now.
Yeah,
I think I know Belial's backstory.
Yeah,
now.
I get it.
Did you get it?
Yeah, I totally get it. I understand why Belial's got issues. And then Belial decides to attack Old Hal and viciously maul him. And so now it's down to Granny Ruth to give birth to help Eve give birth to the babies. And we just keep cutting to little Hal, who stood there with a video camera. Cheesy, overacting, over the top, you know, moments.
And it just keeps going.
Yeah.
And going.
Yeah.
And going. Until 12 of these little fuckers pop out.
12 mini Belials.
I mean, I thought the joke was going to end at 3. I was like, there'll be 3 of them. It's the third basket case, right?
Yeah, no. 12. Fucking 12. Dwayne at this point has obviously jumped out the window, ran back to the sheriff's station, and has come across Opal, who I don't understand why she wasn't offended when Dwayne didn't remember her name. You know? But she decides to have him locked up for him telling her the truth. And she tells the 2 deputies at the sheriff's station about Belial and all the freaks at Old Hal's house. And luckily one of the sheriffs has one of the newspaper cuttings from the second movie saying that there's $1 million reward for Belial and Dwayne's capture. So the 2 deputies head over to the house and come across all of the freaks, but don't want to leave just yet because they want to get Belial. They climb through a window and happen to climb into the exact room where Eve and the babies are being stored because Bilal's eating spaghetti in the kitchen with all the freaks.
Put that down! Belial, come on down! You're a bad Belial!
What the fuck? What the fuck?
So they end up inadvertently killing Eve and escaping and stealing the brood of babies and taking them back to the police station.
Yeah.
There's also a really awkward scene where Opal is dressed in sort of S&M gear. And I was like, ooh, it was quite racy. But it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, she decides that she thinks that Dwayne's a bad boy. And this is how she deals with bad boys, by stripping down to her underwear. I think it's because they realised at this point the horror movie section was weak and they needed a bit of titillation to keep you in. I mean, we'd already had that fantasy sequence with Belial, with the two topless women rubbing up and down and reading to him poetry. I think it was poetry.
Oh, it's close quadrilateral cousins. One is not burdened by reconciling diagonals. Oh, Belial, make us yours. Make us yours. Section 12. Make us yours.
I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, Opal strips down and gets freaked out when she puts her hand onto Dwayne's side and comes across all the freakiness. And her dad comes in and captures her and decides that he's going to ground her for wearing that. If that was my daughter, I'd have probably done more than ground her. I'd have beaten the shit out of her and be like, what the fuck are you doing, you know? But I do like that moment where he comes across the two deputies who have obviously kidnapped the babies and possibly killed Belial. It's his B speech, where it's like Bailey, Baxter, Ben, go get the basket and put them in the booth. And it's really hard to remember. I'm just going to show it to you in clip form.
We're going to need fucking bazookas. All right, look. You boys have been through a lot tonight. Bailey, you book the Bradley boy. Baxter, take the bassinet of baby Belial's in back and get Brody to come by. Where's Brennan and Benner?
Bowling. It's Thursday, Sheriff.
Call the names and tell them to get their butts back in here.
So, finally, the freaks decide to muster together and take Belial to the police station. Now, this police station attack is nowhere as good as the Terminators or Maniac Cop 2's.
I was expecting an Assault on Precinct 13 style, you know, all the freaks sort of raiding the police station.
Oh, you don't need to. You just send Belial in there.
Yeah, just leave him in a basket outside the front door of the police station. I was like, oh.
Because he's that awesome.
And so the cop comes in and he picks up the basket and he takes it in and he puts it down and he opens it up and finally, Belial goes on a killing spree.
Jesus God!
That's just stupid. It's like it's not even funny. It's just like
Yeah, I've seen that shot far too many times, reused far too many times on YouTube, where people are like, oh look, it's the greatest horror killings in it ever, and you're like, that's not really.
Not really.
I mean,
you get the cop who ends up getting his head twisted round backwards and he flails around for a little bit.
Yeah.
And inadvertently kills the sheriff's daughter.
Yeah.
Which I was surprised at.
Who inadvertently kills one of Belial's babies because she was going to keep it as a pet.
And one of them sits on it and crushes it.
Yeah, she drops it on the floor when she freaks out, and then when she's shocked, she sits down on it.
I did feel really sorry for the sheriff when he comes back to the station and he sees the massacre that's occurred. And when he finds his daughter, I genuinely felt quite sad for him. I was like, wow, it's the first time I felt anything for a character in a basket case movie.
Oh no. That is little girl. Oh, baby. Oh, God, no. Oh, God.
But, yeah, Belial was obviously ripped apart at the police station, and as he's escaped, he's been shot and injured. So Dwayne has taken Belial back to Little Hal and bandaged him up and helped repair him, and realised that if something was to happen to Dwayne, Belial would be on his own. So what should he do to make sure that Belial's never stuck in that situation ever again? That's right, build him a power suit exoskeleton. It is the worst fight sequence ever.
It's, yeah, a showdown between the sheriff and Mecha Belial.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd already lost interest in this film like 20 minutes into it. You know, I was hovering over the fast forward button throughout the film, but I didn't. I made it all the way through, but as soon as this fight broke out, I just gave up.
Yeah.
I was like, the filmmakers have clearly given up.
Yeah.
You're not even trying. This is just terrible. It's not funny. There's no suspense. This is what you call action.
Yeah, because it made it worse because the fact that he'd gone and killed those other two sheriffs as well before they come across the main sheriff, and those death sequences were fucking atrocious. But they weren't even death sequences. You got the guy in the underpants running back and forth with Belial's arm grabbing him, and you know, you hear the noises of the saws and stuff, but it's not even Belial who kills the sheriff. The sheriff falls into the basket of babies and they eat him.
You little bastard.
And then it cuts to Ronaldo, the show, because they're talking about freaks. And just before the show starts, Granny Ruth bursts onto the set with all the other freaks, along with Dwayne and Belial in the background, and gives her speech about how the freaks aren't going to be hiding anymore. And this is how bad the third movie is that Dwayne isn't even the main character anymore. He's in the background.
Well, ever since the second film, he's had less and less screen time, and his character's not become, you know, the pivotal point of the film anymore.
Yeah.
The two sequels to Basket Case are really about Granny Ruth and her freaks. And she gets the final line in the film as well, where she's just like, you know, it's okay to be a freak, you know, and if you're not, we're going to get you.
Yeah. Wow. Favourite scenes for the third movie?
I have one,
Yeah.
and I think it was the cop who gets his face torn off.
Oh yeah, he's got his lip, isn't it?
He's got his lip, and it's got of stretches and pulls, and I was like,
and then all of a sudden his whole
head comes off instead. I was just like, yeah, okay, well, that was the most memorable part for me, other than the water breaking. I was like, that's just stupid.
Like favourite scenes, none of them are memorable. Like what Gary said, I got to the third movie and I'd already seen it. I knew why I wasn't ever going back, but I had to sit through it, and just scene after scene just started making me go, this is stupid. It's like when Ruth comes across little Hal and he's like, Mom, and you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, you know. I really wanted him to die at one point. I will say, like I said, my favorite scenes are Dwayne. You know, when he's trying to escape from the window of the school bus, and when he's trying to escape from the straitjacket, and then when he jumps out the window when Granny Ruth lets him go. Those are it. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's my thing. I don't recommend Basket Case 3, The Progeny, unless you've already got through 1 and 2, and you kind of owe it to yourself to watch the third one to finish off the series. It's not a great sequel. It is better than some other horror movies, I can say, especially a horror movie series that have waned. You know, Basket Case 3 is a good example of why you should stop after a while. You know, if your first one was a hit, but your second one was not, the third one isn't going to be amazing. Okay? The Evil Dead trilogy do it very, very well. And that's a very unique standing point. With Basket Case, especially the third one, it drags, it's weak, it's not that funny. The focus isn't much on Dwayne anymore, and he is actually the best part of the third one. He's the normal person surrounded by all these fucked up assholes.
Yeah, I don't recommend Basket Case 3. It was just such a horrible way to end You know, the basket case films, especially as I really now hold the first one to a fairly high regard within the realm of exploitation movies at the time.
Yeah.
These sequels are just cash-ins on the success of that with a story that just doesn't work for me. So fast forward your way through the third one. There's a couple of nuggets of okayness, but the rest is just awful.
I would say, though, I'd like them to remake the first one.
I think Belial could be an interesting character. He has a sympathetic background. He has a backstory. He has motivation for those that he needs to hunt down. I guess with a decent enough budget.
Yeah.
I mean, you're turning this into a full feature with an actual budget and actors. And locations
special,
and sets.
big special effects, gore over the top. You know, have the kills really, really, you know, major,
imaginative and work. Yeah.
At the same time, people who are fans of Basket Case, if they're going to see the remake, Basket Case, they'll already know what's in the basket. You can keep that suspense going. Maybe even have a female, you know, and it's her brother who was detached. Just do not keep showing the backstory. Okay, we probably don't even really need to see it, or don't even really need to see it till the end. You know, just take the first one, boost it up to 11, and you know, just don't make the sequels ever again.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.